Education for All Handicapped Children Act, passed by Congress in 1975. This was the first special education law directed at students with special and mental disabilities. The law stated that public school must provide children with special needs with the same opportunities for education as other children. It also required any public schools that receive federal funds to provide one free meal a day for these children. The mission of this act was to make special education services accessible to children who require them, maintain fair and appropriate services for disabled students, institute systematic evaluation requirements for special education, and endow federal resources to public schools for the education of disabled students.
Education for All Handicapped Children Act, known as Public Law 54 to 142, was the first recorded law of special education that was passed by the U.S. Congress in 1975. It ensures that all children with disabilities have access for a free and appropriate public education, or FAPE, that emphasizes special education and related services. It provides the same education that a normal student gets what's designed to meet their unique needs and prepare them for further education and employment and independent living.
This act aims success to those who need it and show fairness to all disability students. It also provides evaluation and gives fair resources for public school, especially for those children with special needs.
The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, was created in 1990 and is a modification of the Education for All Handicapped Children Act. This law ensures that special needs students receive appropriate free public education in the least restrictive environment necessary to meet those students' needs. It helps students receive the extra assistance they need, but allows them to participate in the same activities as children without special needs, whenever possible.
In 1990, the Education for All Handicapped Children Act was modified and known as the Individuals with Disabilities Act. This law guarantees that students with special needs receives a suitable free public education in the settings with the fewest restrictions required to meet their needs.
According to Section 7 of this Act, private schools must provide services and reasonable accommodations based on IEPs and have the right to use the necessary assistance and related services. This federal legislation is designed to ensure that children with disabilities be granted a free appropriate public education, or FAPE, in the least restrictive education environment, LRC.
In 2001, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, commonly known as the No Child Left Behind Act, called for schools to be accountable for academic performance of all students, whether or not they had disabilities. The Act requires schools in every state to develop routine assessment of students' academic skills. While it does not stipulate that this assessment meet the national standard, the law does oblige each state to come up with its own criteria for evaluation. No Child Left Behind provides incentive for schools to demonstrate progress in students with special needs. It also allows for students to seek alternative options if schools are not meeting their academic, social, or emotional needs.
The No Child Left Behind Act, or NCLB, is the most recent modification to the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. It was passed by the Congress with overwhelming bipartisan support in 2001 and signed into law on January 8, 2002. The NCLB law significantly increased the federal government's responsibility for holding schools responsible for the academic growth of all children. The law was born out of worries that the American educational system was no longer competitive on a global scale. It also placed a particular emphasis on making sure that government and school improve the performance of specific student groups.
This law was implemented by the Philippine Department of Education, or DepEd. No Child Left Behind is meant to protect a child's fundamental right to a good education. This law promotes direct involvement of governmental bodies in overseeing the education of children under their jurisdiction, especially at the barangay level. The Department of Education is responsible for developing the compulsory education curriculum and only permits a small amount of exceptional education. No Child Left Behind was seen a strong, controversial piece of legislation that addressed many different aspects of public education.
Individualized education programs. The idea maintains that parents and teachers of children who qualify for special education must develop an individualized education program, or IEP, that helps establish specific education for a child's explicit needs. This requires caregivers to meet initially, determine a child's eligibility for an IEP, and to come together annually to develop and assess the education plan. The student's educational strategy must be designated in writing and should include an evaluation and description of the current academic status, measurable goals and objectives, designation of an instructional setting and placement within the setting, and transition services for children aged 16 or older. An IEP gives parents the right to dispute any issues with the school district through a neutral third party.
An Individualized Education Program, or IEP, is a legal document under United States law that is developed for each public school child in the United States who needs special education. It is created through a team of the child's parents and district personnel who are knowledgeable about the child's needs. IEPs must be reviewed every year to keep track of the child's educational progress. It outlines the special education experience for all eligible students with a disability. The IEP provides accommodations, modifications, related services, and specialized academic instruction to ensure that every eligible child receives a free appropriate public education or FAPE in the least restrictive environment, or LRE.
Rehabilitation Act of 1973. The Rehabilitation Act of 1973, as amended, Rehab Act, prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability in programs conducted by federal agencies, in programs receiving federal financial assistance, in federal employment, and in the employment practices of federal contractors. Section 501 prohibits employment discrimination against people with disability. Section 503 prohibits employers with federal contracts or subcontracts from discriminating against applicants and employees with disabilities.
Section 504 prohibits discrimination against people with disability by any program receiving financial assistance or by any program or activity conducted by federal executive agency. Section 508 addresses information technology, requires information and communication technology to be accessible to people with disability. The American with Disabilities Act, or ADA, became law in 1990. The ADA is civil rights law that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disability in all areas of public life, including jobs, schools, transportation, and all public and private places that are open to general public.
The Rehabilitation Act of 1973 focuses on programs administered by federal agencies such as the Department of Education and outlaws discrimination against persons with disabilities. Meanwhile, an increasing number of disabled high school students hope to continue their education at post-secondary institutions such as vocational and career schools, 2- and 4-year colleges and universities, which is why they decided to merge the ADA law of 1990 with the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, as it states that it is all about the rights of all people, including those with disabilities, to enjoy their lives in all public areas.